By now, we should all be comfortable logging into Aristotle. We should all be comfortable starting to be able to search for things, being able to favorite things. The next big thing that we want to look at is basically creating and maintaining metadata. So this one's pretty interactive, and I think you should have received an email earlier today that gave you a list of some of the activities, and we're going to perform these slowly, and we're going to perform them together. So if you do have questions, and if you want to share your screen to kind of clarify, we can do that as part of this module. The idea is that there's a lot of content that you can create through Aristotle, and they all have their own kind of different special attributes. What we want to do through this session is, rather than me run through all of the different things you can add and all of the different fields there are, we want to get you comfortable within the platform. You know where to go to get extra content and how to pick and choose the right things to be creating. So in this module, we're going to go through the metadata types. We're going to go through where you can go to find more assistance, as we do in all of our ones. We're going to run through a couple of different activities. So we're going to run through cloning some content or copying some content, as you might know. We'll create some content using some different using the different wizards that we have in Aristotle that make it easier to link content together. We'll show you how to find the common components of metadata, and then the special components that kind of are specific to each thing. We're going to link some stuff together. We're going to help you find stuff in your sandbox, and we're going to help you find or view changes to your content as well. So the first thing we're going to do, so just to do a quick recap about what we can put in Aristotle. We saw this slide earlier, but the idea is we can start creating our business definitions, our performance frameworks, our business glossaries, our reference data, our classifications, and our questions all in there. And we've designed the system to kind of give you a single location to find a complete menu of all the content you can create that can be configured by your registry to pick and choose exactly what you're able to do. The way that you do this is you go to the Create Metadata section of your registry, and I'll bring the facts one up in a minute so we're all looking at the same content. But the idea is either from your dashboard, you can go Create Metadata, or anywhere in the site, you can click the little plus create icon in the top right, select plus, and you can either quickly jump to one of the main components, or you can start creating, you can see all the content you can create as well. So what that looks like is it looks a little bit like this. So from my dashboard, if I go create metadata, you should see a page that looks a little bit like this. At the top, we've got some wizards that step you through how to create lots of content. That becomes really valuable when you know you want to create an object class and properties and link stuff all together. Or if you want to jump straight in and start creating a single piece of content, you go, I want to make a data element and nothing else, or I want to go off and I want to create my classifications, if I want to create data sets and data catalogs and data distributions, if I want to start recording my performance indicator content, or I want to start recording my business glossaries and linking things together, that's all there. And if you need help, you can just select any of these help buttons and they'll take you off to a help page, which I might show you now, just give you a quick view. So it'll show you all of the fields, it'll give you official definitions, and we're constantly expanding this help so that you can kind of understand exactly what's available. So all of these will look the same, and you'll see any help or custom help that's been applied for your registry. Creating metadata, as we said, there's two different ways you can do it. Towards the bottom of the screen, if you want to create a single piece of content, it steps you through two steps. The first step is entering a name and a definition. And as we said in the last training session, it'll go off and try and find extra content that already exists to kind of prompt you in the direction of not creating something new, but linking or reusing something that exists. The second set of wizards we have are those ones at the top that are useful for creating a data element and its concept and its object class, its property, value domain, and all the bits underneath. The idea here is that if you say what you're trying to get information about and how you're trying to store it, it'll step you through trying to find the components necessary to bring it together. And we'll have a look at an example. We'll run through an example of that in a second as well. So the first part of this follow along activity, we're going to look at a little real world example, and we're going to look at training evaluation. So one of the activities that we do is we run a training evaluation form. Unfortunately, it's a paper form at the moment, so we might send through a link for training evaluation after this. But the idea is we collect some data about how our training goes so that we can feed that into part of our own continual improvement process, so that the next time we do this, the next time we see you, our training gets a little bit better every time. And the way we do that is we have a form that looks a little bit like this. So this could be thought of as a little bit like a data set, and I'll show you an example of that in a second. But the idea is I'm collecting information. I've got a kind of a specification that says I need to collect the date, I need to collect the location, I need to collect the participant organization, and I want to know how well a participant thought they agreed or disagreed with the performance of the training and the trainer on the day. So we've got a reused code set from agree to, or strongly agree to strongly disagree. I'm reusing that a couple of times. And what we're going to do as a part of this activity is we're going to copy this distribution that describes our data set, and we're going to expand it. So we're going to add an additional code and say, well, this one wasn't applicable because, maybe it was an online only component. So question 4, participation was encouraged. Like if you were to rewatch this video after the fact, I can give you a good thumbs up and hope you do a good job, but I can't really encourage you to participate because it'd be a video. So you just go, well, that's not applicable. The second one is we might want to add an additional kind of attribute that we're measuring for performance and say, well, how well prepared was the trainer? Did they have everything ready? Can I agree or disagree with that? Or maybe again, because it was an online one, there was nothing to prepare, so maybe that's not applicable. So we're going to expand this data set to add some more fields, and then we're going to look at stitching some indicators around this as well. So as an example, here's how we might collect this data for ourselves, and it's really similar to what we actually do. So as you can see, I've got a number value for each of the the codes that we previously saw. So 5 would be strongly agree, and then 1 would be strongly disagree. But I can't see that from the Excel spreadsheet. All I'm seeing is the numbers and the dates and information about the organizations. The second thing that I'm going to look at here is an indicator. So we might internally have a performance training metric or a key performance indicator that says, well, if you're one of the training and development group, you need to be having an average score above 4 for you to be doing a good job, for you to get your annual yearly Christmas bonus that we're coming up for. So what we're looking at is, even though it's a small scale example, our distribution really becomes a description of a single piece of data that I can manage. So it's a table in a database or an Excel document or a CSV or even a published PDF document with some data in. And an indicator becomes a way that I might use that data to measure performance. So this might be a data distribution for, instead of just a small or like a software company, it might be, performance for thousands of hospitals in a state. And the indicator might be, not only is it how we measure performance, it might be, how we decide which hospitals get funding over the next 5 years. So the scale is drastically different, but the activity is really tightly focused on today on something that we're all kind of going through to help us work through that. So the first part of the follow along activity is getting everybody to your training work group. So what we're going to do is we're all going to go to our dashboard, and I'm going to run through this as well. So I'll see if I can do this. I'll see if I can do both at the same time. Just go like this. So I've got my dashboard up, and if I go to my work groups, you'll see I've created one for us. So training November 2020, everybody should have a training November 2020 work group. And you should be able to go into the metadata section. So just make sure my slides say the same thing. Yep, if we go into our metadata section, you should see one of the first things showing up is, and on the next page, there it is. Yep, so it's right at the bottom because it was one of the first things created. So right at the end, you'll see this 2020 training participant evaluation results. And if you open this, this is the one that Lauren showed earlier. And that's our first follow along activity, is making sure we can all navigate to this section. So just to be clear, we'll do that one more time, and I'll do it a little bit slower. So if I go to my dashboards, I should be able to go to my work groups here. If I open my training November 2020 work group, I can see that we've got all of our members in here, and because I've kind of shrunk the screen down, it's been a little bit wonky. But what I can do is I can then go into my metadata. I'll go all the way down the bottom. I'll go next. I'll go all the way down the bottom. And I've got my 2020 training participant evaluation results. So has everybody had a chance to find this? Has anybody struggled and got stuck? So if everybody's silent, we'll assume everybody got it.
I am in my work groups, but I can't see any number.
Ooh. Did I add you in? Let's see who's a member of the work group. Karim is a member.
Yes. Filter work group. Can I share my screen, show you?
Sure. So let me just stop sharing. I'll stop sharing.
That's what I'm seeing.
Oh, hang on.
That's not what I'm seeing. Sorry.
That's okay.
It's problematic when you have got so many things open.
No, it's fine. Should be the same.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. Is anybody else having issues, or has everybody else been successful?
That's what I'm seeing at my screen. I clicked on work groups, and that's where it took me.
So you should see down the bottom, there's a third from the bottom, training November 2020.
That one. Okay.
There we go.
Good. Thank you.
Is everybody else going okay?
Yep.
Yeah. Groovy. All right. Yep. Fantastic. If anybody does have issues, like this is the hands-on component, so we should be fine. So I'm going to share again. I'll share my screen, and I'll go back to our slides. So we found our work group. We found some content, and it's out of date. So that's what our next big step to fix is we're going to clone this. So we've found our training and evaluations results, and what's going on there? Oh, hang on. Oh, goodness. I was
sharing on top of it?
No, I was grabbing screenshots and arrange, send it back. That's better. Groovy. Good Lord. All right, I've adjusted slides. So what we're going to do is we're going to clone this item. So there's a lot of content in here. I don't want to have to recreate it. We really encourage, like where possible, we want to make this as seamless as we can. So rather than having to recreate this for next year with the updated list of codes and the new column, what I'm going to do is I'm going to clone this item, and I want everybody to do this themselves as well. So if you just select the actions bar and click clone, what it will do is it will take you to an editing page that looks like this. So I'll bring that back up, and I'll make this one a little bit bigger. So I found my training and evaluation. And from this screen, be bigger. Let's make it all the way big. I just want you to hit actions and then clone this item. So nothing's saved yet. It hasn't saved. It's just getting ready to save. And what we're going to do is we're going to update it to add our additional column in. So I'll show you how we're going to do that. What we're going to do is we're going to go to the Components tab. We're going to scroll down, and we know that in our spreadsheet there was an additional column we needed to add in. We're going to start collecting information about how prepared was the trainer. Because we don't have a data element for that, that's okay. All we're going to do is we're going to describe the conceptual idea of what this data set should be, and then we'll add stuff as we go through. So on our definitions tab, we'll always have a name, a version, the work group, and the definition. The references, names and references we'll skip over, but again, all consistent stuff. So the definition and names and references will be the same for every metadata item, and they're the common attributes across every piece of metadata. Components is where things get different. So each metadata type will have a list of extra attributes that it can have. So for example, the release date for this one will no longer be in this year. It'll be next, whoops, come back, 2021, 12/31. So you can also pick the date picker here to pick the date. I can add it to a data set. I can add a license. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to scroll down the bottom, and these you can see are all collapsed, but these define all of the different fields in the table. And what I mean by that is, if I jump back, so here we can see there's a number of definitions that link the column name, which we use quite a lot, to the data element itself. So here we can see we've got the date that the training was delivered. We're going to add one of these in when we clone it. So from our cloning tab, I'll jump back now. In here, I'm just going to go add another, like we saw on the slide. And all I'm going to do is I'm just going to say this is prepared. So how prepared was the trainer? There's a new column that's been added in. I might want to add in some specific information and say, no data element available yet. It hasn't been standardized. So I can add any extra information that's necessary for this column. And then all we're going to do is we're going to hit save. Hit create new item. Now, as long as you didn't select a work group on the first tab, this is going to jump straight into your sandbox, and it's going to be your first private piece of content. So if I click create new item, it's going to save. I'm going to scroll down, and I'm going to see I've got my extra column, and it's got a little bit of extra information. I haven't linked it to a data element, so I'm showing two blank areas here. So this is all blank, but we're going to fix that in the next section. So I'll jump back to the slide so we can see how that all happened. So we went to our page, we cloned the item, we updated the definition, or we should have updated the definition to remove the word clone. I think I forgot that step. We went to our components, we added our extra section down the bottom, and we hit save, and then everything was completed. So did everybody have an okay job getting that done?
I had a button for create new item rather than save.
Yeah, so that was my...
Same thing, is it? Yep.
Yeah, same thing. Everybody else went okay? We're all creating content and becoming expert metadata users, which is good to hear. All right, cool. Okay, so if we look at this again, we can see that all of these have a really clear definition behind them. And if I was to click on any of these data elements, I'd see not only where else it's used, but I'd start to see a full and complete definition for all of its components, like what is a training session and what list of codes is used. So I want to start doing that for my one down the bottom. So I've created this new section in my data, and I want to create a complete data element. So that's our next step. So our next follow along activity is we're going to create a data element with the data element wizard. So we've seen how to clone stuff, and the cloning and the creation is really similar. This time we're going to use the wizard to find and bring a whole bunch of components together. So the way that we do that is, again, we go to our creating metadata items section, and we're going to select create new data element at the top, and I'll do a run through of this with you in a second as well. So if we select create new data element and go get started, it's going to bring us to a page that looks like this. So what this allows us to do is it allows us to basically search through and find components across the registry and start bringing them together. So we're going to start with, we want to collect some more information about a training session. We really want to, what we're trying to figure out is, is there an indicator of how prepared a trainer was? And we're going to base that, we're going to store that information on our code that we've been using quite a lot, which is the participant agreement code. So I've got a code that I use to store, strongly agree to strongly disagree on a 5-point scale. I want to reuse that to really analyze my trainer preparation indicator and compare it with other things. And then if I was to enter all of those, I'd see a screen that looks a little like this. So I'm going to run through an example with you now, and we'll step through the rest of this together. And we're going to show how Aristotle helps you find all of these pieces of content. This is probably one of the riskiest ones. This is my favorite one. We're going to find out. This should go really smoothly, and I'm very excited. So I'm going to go see all, and I'm going to create my new metadata. Now, what I'm interested in is collecting information about a training session. I'm going to get a trainer preparation indicator, and as you can see, I've done this one before, so I'm going to save myself some typing. And then I want to store this as an agreement. What was the term I used? Participant agreement. So participant agreement indicator code. And just leave it there for a sec. So everybody should have a chance to start typing some of this in. Now, the reason that it does this is it's going to go off and search across the registry to help me start creating this content and doing it in a way that meets the naming conventions of my registry, that makes sure that I'm not, creating things, because everything that you create in the system, you kind of start to become a little bit responsible for. So it's designed to help you kind of share the load of keeping this up to date. So we'll click search. And it's going to go off and search for some content. So as you can see, it started to find a whole bunch of information across the registry. So what it's found is there's a number of different copies of this training session object class. And it's found some additional ones that might be of use that other people have created. Now, this is because I'm an administrator. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this first one, and I'm going to hope that somebody else is going to update stuff later on. So I'm going to select my training session. It's told me that it hasn't found anything that matches training preparation indicator. There's nothing that it can use. So we're going to have to create one, and it's going to help step me through that. And then the last thing it's going to do is we're going to look at the participant agreement indicator code. So I might want to preview that. So I'm going to open that in a new tab. And if I switch over, I can see, well, this is definitely the one I'm interested in. I really want to reuse this 5-point scale for recording agreement. So I'm going to use this one. So I'll close the tab. I feel really confident, and that one as well. If I didn't like this value domain, I could have selected none of the above meet my needs, and it would have allowed me to create a new one. So Aristotle's never going to stop you from doing something. It's just going to prompt you and say, hey, I found some stuff that might be useful. Give it a look. And if it's not useful, then, it'll allow you to continue on. So I'm going to go down the bottom, and I'm going to go next. So the very next step that it's going to say is, well, I want you to create this property. So you've told me that you're interested in collecting trainer preparation indicators about a training session. So we're going to have to define that. So this is an indicator that describes the preparation, a participant's opinion of the preparation of a trainer. I'm very glad that I'm not being evaluated on my typing speed and accuracy, just on my preparation. So the really good value here is this property is talking about all possible ways that we might evaluate a trainer. So if down the track we decided that we were only going to use a 3-point scale of agree, not sure, disagree, or used a 7-point scale, or maybe even had a big plain text field, they'd all still be linked to the same property. So the property is really just a conceptual idea of, what are we trying to get information about, not how it's physically stored. So we just want to know, does a participant of training, there we go, participant of training, let's say a training participant, there we go, that's better. A training participant's opinion of the preparation of a trainer. So how well do I think we're doing? So I'm going to save that, and it's going to take us to the next step. Now, fortunately, we've set up some business rules in the registry to help us create our data element concept. And our data element concept is the bit that brings our object class and our property together. So if I have a whole bunch of data with the same data element concept, it allows us to find all of the related data. Now, really good registries will have a business rule, and the business rule that's been set up in the facts registry is this idea that we separate the name of the object class and of the property by this little colon. So it's already pre-populated that for us. And because Aristotle's really intelligent and really user-friendly, we really try very hard to make sure that that's the case. It's tried to build a definition by bringing stuff together. Now, it's not always perfect. It does have to stitch together the two definitions that you've created, and to make sure that it kind of reminds you that you might want to double check. We always add this bit at the bottom that says this was an auto-generated definition. So I'll get rid of that, and I'll read it out. So our training session trainer preparation indicator is an indicator that describes, I'll fix that up later, a training participant's opinion of the preparation of a trainer of a vocational activity designed to provide directed instruction to participants to improve their overall skills in a topic. That sounds pretty accurate. So it's not it's not a peer's it's not a peer's opinion of the preparation of a trainer. It's not like a manager's opinion of the preparation of a trainer. So we might want to be collecting data in different ways, and we could kind of add additional information to record those. What we're really talking about is how well do participants think that the trainer did for the training session. So we hit save. And because we've elected to reuse an existing code, it's dropped that in for us. So again, we don't have to create the code list. We're going to reuse the same one. And it's going to just ask us to finalize the data element at this stage. So again, it's added our auto-generated definition. So I'm going to remove that. And again, it's an indicator of somebody's opinion of a trainer of a vocational activity recorded as a code set representing the level of agreement or disagreement for a series of statements. So it's a really tight-knit definition that says this is about how well somebody was prepared for running a training session using an agreed set of codes. So we should all be approximately in the same place now. And then the last thing that we're going to do is we're just going to hit next. And all we're going to do now is, because we could be creating, you know, sometimes 3, sometimes 1, sometimes up to 6 new items, it will give you this final warning screen, a final confirmation screen that's missing a little bit of information up here that I'll let my team know about. The red bit. So before anybody reports that, I'll just notice that bug. But what it does is it just gives you this little tick box. Like, you may have gone through the process and you may have, you know, elected to create a whole bunch of new content, and you may get to the end and you might want to just verify that you're about to create all the right things. This gives you the opportunity to review that. Once you've clicked review, I've reviewed this item, you're pretty much ready to go. So what I'm going to do now is I'll hit save and finish. Oops. Oh no, somebody saved one. Oh, great. Somebody must have saved and it's gone back and tried to stop me. Oh, oops. Oh no, everybody's saving it. Oh no, this is going to get really tragic. This is why I shouldn't use a super user account. Okay, let me try that again. Is it going to let me go through? There we go.
You're going too fast. I can't follow you.
Oh, sorry. I'll go back. What happened
That's
there?
okay. That's okay.
What happened was it had noticed that behind the scenes some people had saved some content and I hadn't ticked all the right boxes, and it kind of drove me back a few steps. So what I'll do is I'll start again. I'll just do that again. There we go. Leave this page. Let's start again. Create a new data element.
Sam, so, your screen has gone.
My screen is gone.
Yeah, I can't see it at the moment.
Ooh.
No, I can see it. It's your bandwidth.
I can see it.
I can't either.
I think it's your bandwidth.
That's my bandwidth, you reckon, Karim?
Yes, because I can see it.
Okay, cool.
I can't. Mine was definitely there, and now it's gone.
Yeah, mine's the same. That's all right. It's fine. If it's
your connection has gone wobbly, Nick.
Yeah, that's probably true.
What I'll do is I'll try this. What I'll do is I'll stop sharing and then I'll reshare.
Maybe stop the video review as well.
I'll turn my video off. Nobody needs to see me today. We'll turn.
It's back.
That's
now,
better.
Sam.
I can see it again.
Fantastic. All right, so I'm going to run through mine again because as a trainer, I've got a few additional permissions and it kind of broke my example because people hit save and it worked, which was good. Everybody was doing a good job.
Sorry, Sam.
Yep.
Can you go back one step?
Sure.
Just go back to the previous page. So the first one is the name of the object.
Yep.
So the second one is the property name.
Yep.
And then the third one is the value domain. So this is how the hierarchy goes. So value domain is the most granular level. So it's describing the actual data set.
So which part? Sorry, you broke up for a second.
So the first one is the object name. The second one is the property name.
Yep.
The third one is the domain name.
Yep.
So is that how the hierarchy goes in terms of?
No, they all kind of sit together and they all record a little bit of different information about it. So like you could kind of think as the object class, so the first one, the object class here, and the property kind of sitting side by side to define the concept. So a training session, trainer preparation indicator versus say a university trainer's preparation versus a school's trainer preparation. So they sit alongside to kind of define that concept.
Yep.
And then the third one, the value domain. Again, it could kind of be a hierarchy, but again, the way that we kind of show it in the diagrams is it sits alongside. And the idea is that there could be multiple different ways that you might record that preparation. Like we said, like there's a 5-point scale, a 3-point scale, just a little block of text. And that participant agreement indicator might be used in a bunch of different ways. So as you saw, or as we'll show in a second, once we save this, we've reused a participant agreement indicator as a 5-point scale to assess all of our different data that we're collecting. So they all kind of sit alongside each other to help build up an individual data element.
Yeah. So with the object name, is there a standardized way of naming the object? So you got a person's business, and now you got the training sessions. Is it really up to the person who created to name the object class, or is it really ad hoc?
So it depends on the role of the business. However, the recommendations really are, and I think you'll see this if you go to create an object class on its own. The recommendations are it should be a singular noun. So it's about a training session. It's about a person. It's about a hospital, a school. The idea is that information about individuals. So, for example, a person can have a bunch of attributes or a bunch of properties. So a person can have an age, a person can have a date of birth or a name, and a group of people. So you might be gathering information about a family unit, for example, or a group of people, and they'll have other information. So a group of people will have, how many people are in the group. They'll have an average age. They'll have, a family structure. So the idea there is that the recommendations are object classes should be singular names, and I believe the standard that we're encouraging people with, and we will be publishing a basic kind of guide, like a business rules guide for implementation by different agencies. But the recommendations we're putting forward are just the first letter capitalized and everything else lowercase to make it easier for people to find where the object class and the property begin and end.
Okay.
Sam, I was trying to find the wizard for creating the element. When I click on the plus and click on data element, it takes me into the create data element step 1 of 2, search for existing content.
If you go to see all, it'll show you the full list.
See all.
Down the bottom here.
Sorry. Where? Oh, I see.
Can you see my screen? There.
Yeah, I can see your screen. Okay.
So if we go see all.
Yeah.
And I
okay.
go.
Gotcha. Yep.
So that one.
Yes, I understand now.
So what I might do is I might quickly run through mine. So I'm going to go through this a little quicker than normal because I think everybody's had a chance to get through this.
Yeah.
But just to make sure that we're all following the same examples, I'm going to run through. So what was it? Participant agreement indicator code. So I'm going to run through. Now, if I click search, I'm going to pick a training session that already exists. I can see that at least 5 people have been very successful in creating a training preparation indicator, which is why my example kind of fell over earlier. So I'm going to say, I don't want any of those. I'm going to create my own, just like everybody else. And I'm going to reselect this participant agreement indicator. Now, because I'm an administrator, I can see other people's sandboxes, which is why these are showing up. But if you ran through this again, you'd only see your own example. So I'm going to click next. And I'm going to define my training indicator, and I'm going to do it really quickly. How prepared was the trainer. And again, we're not assessing the spelling or the grammar, which is good. So I'll save that. And again, it started to pull together my definition. So how prepared was the trainer of a vocational activity designed to provide instruction, da, 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 da. So our definition looks really good. So I'll remove the auto-generated bit and click Save Data Element Concept. It's found my data, it's found my value domain. Found my value domain. And what it's done now is I've pulled together my definition. So I'll remove that bit and then I'll just click Next. It's going to ask me my check. So I'm going to just say, no, I've reviewed my items. So everybody, I think this is where we were at before. So if you haven't clicked Save and Finish, we can do that now. I'm going to hit Save and Finish and it should work perfectly. And there we go. So it's told me that it's saved a whole bunch of content in this little notification up the top. And if I scroll down, I can see it's pulled all of my bits together. So I can see that for this definition of training preparation indicator, it talks about how prepared the trainer was for an activity based on an agreed set of codes. I can see my agreed set of codes, and I can see that it's pulling these codes from this participant agreement indicator code. So both of these links will go to the same place. And if I jump across, one of the really great things is it'll show me that this code set here is now being used in 13 different places. So that tells me that there's 13 different areas that I could go to find related content. And you'll see this related content section at the bottom of every metadata item. It'll show you the different relationships that show up and it'll show you the different links that exist between different pieces of metadata. So everybody should have been able to get to this page here. So everybody should have been able to save their new data element. Did everybody have an okay job of that?
Yep.
Yep.
I made a mess out of it, but that's okay.
All right, what I'll do.
Yes. Yep.
I'll move mine. I'm going to edit mine. And I'm going to move this one to our training work group. Just for people who didn't have a chance to follow along, because this will become really useful in a second. I'm going to just hit save. All right, so that's now in our training work group. So other people can use this one as an example if they get stuck. So I'm going to jump back to our slides. So we were able to follow along with our wizard. We created a new property. We then created our new data element concept, and we were able to create our data element. We reviewed it. We saved. We were all really successful. Everybody had a fantastic time. I was there. You really enjoyed it. No. Sorry, it's hard going through training for metadata registries. It's always good to try and make it fun. So we just created a whole bunch of content and we did it in a really easy way. It didn't require a lot of steps and it helped us build and connect all of these components together, which is really, really valuable. What we're going to look at now is we're going to look at filling in the gap. So we had a look earlier at the distribution. We cloned our distribution and we said we were going to fill something in later after we'd created our data element, and that's what we're going to do now. So we created a data element. We saw we didn't have to recreate object classes and code lists. We were able to copy those in. So we're going to attach this data element to our distribution. Now, the way that we're going to do that is we're going to go back to our sandbox. And I might just do this activity step by step with you in a sec. So we're going to go to our sandbox and you'll find in there, you'll find your 2020 training participant evaluation results that you cloned across that you created earlier. One other way that you might find this is you'll see it in your view history. You'll see that, you know, it was one of the most recent things you viewed. So I'll show you that in a second. And we're going to edit it. To add this piece of content in. So I'm going to jump across to my example and I'll show you how to do that. So I'll ignore my tab that I had there because that would be the cheating way. So I'm going to go to my dashboard. Oh, we've got a question. Is that a question? Somebody in the lobby. Okay. So I'm at my dashboard and I can go to my sandbox. And I can see that I've got all of my content here. I'm going to edit this distribution. So you should have something similarly named called a 2020 Training Participation Evaluation Results or something similar. The other thing to note is that you can jump straight to the edit screen from here, and you can also jump straight to you can also delete content from here. If you came along to our information session yesterday, you would have seen that we're actually expanding our deletion policies to give more control to workgroup administrators to delete things. But at the moment, right now, the only way is to delete it from your sandbox. That's the only place you can delete stuff right now. The other thing I want to show you is if I go to my dashboard, you'll see up here you've got a list of recently viewed metadata, and you'll see that it's shown up twice. So this is because I viewed it quite recently. I viewed it recently and I viewed it quite some time ago. So we're working on making this a little bit better. But the idea is here it'll show you all recently viewed metadata. If you saw something and it was a couple of days ago and you wanted to try and find it again, you can hit see more, and that'll jump you to a full list of everything that you've viewed recently, broken down by date and time. So here you can see I viewed some stuff today. I viewed some stuff on the 25th of October last year. And what I can also do is I can actually remove these. So if I know that it's not applicable to me anymore, so let's say this example from this morning I want to get rid of, I might just go remove. And that's just going to remove it from my list. So it's just removed from my history now. So it's not going to show up anymore. So what I can do is we're all going to jump into this clone. So that doesn't delete the item, by the way. It just deletes it from your viewed history if you don't need it anymore. So I'm going to open my distribution from my sandbox or from my view history, and we should sort of all see a piece of content a little bit like this. And we can see down the bottom, I know it's the right one because it doesn't have any information here. So what I can do now is if I edit this content and I go to the components tab here, which is where I know that I can add all of the additional details for these columns. I'm going to go down the bottom and I'm going to expand the bottom one. Now we are actually doing some improvements to this that will show you more details so you know which one to pick. But right now, I just know that it's the one right at the bottom. So I'm going to remove this definition because I've got my data element now. And if I select in here for prepared, I think it is. There we go. So it's found me a bunch that I can use. So I'm going to pick one at random because I don't want to just jump through and show you all of the different copies that people have made. But what I can do is if I select one, it'll add it in here. And then if I click save, it'll save my changes. And then down the bottom, I've now got all of the full information there. So I know what the name is. I can see a definition for it. I know that it's a particular set of codes. And if I wanted to, I could jump in and I could see more information. So, oh, this is Lawrence. There we go. I accidentally grabbed Lawrence. So that's good. And what I can see here is I can see, it's related to a training session. It's related to our participant agreement indicators. It's related to our preparation. And I can see all of the different data distributions that this one's used in. So I think a couple of people may have done the same, or Lauren's done a couple of examples. So if I jump in here, I can see all the different places that this data element is used. So if I wanted to, I could jump back to the distribution. So I'm going to jump back to my distribution real quick. So I'm going to go back, and then I'll go back. Here we go. So on my distribution, what I can see is I'm going to pick a really interesting one, which is the training delivery date. So we should see that this is used in 2 different places down the bottom. Well, it's used in 10 different data it's used in 10 different data distributions because everybody's used this in their own examples. So the really good thing here is if I wanted to see the impact of changing this across the registry, I know that there's 10 places, 10 different data sets that it's going to impact. And if I clicked on that, I could see what those were. So this would be a list of everybody's different examples that they've created. So the idea is that because I've reused content, I can jump across the registry and find different places that this is used. So did everybody attach that to their, I'll close that. Did everybody attach the data element correctly to their distribution?
No, I think you might have to go one more time.
Completely lost us.
Yeah.
Well, lost me anyway.
Right. Yeah, me too.
So I'll open the editor. I'll go to the components. So, well, actually, are we all? Yeah. So is everybody on this page, or has everybody opened their own distribution?
No, yeah, we're on this page, or at least I am.
Cool.
Yes.
Cool. All right, so this we can get from our sandbox, and I can run through that in a second as well. From here, I'm just going to open the item editor. So I want to edit this item, and I want to change certain things about it. What I know is that on this page, I can see my name, my work group, my definition, and my version. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump to the component. So this is the tab that we went to earlier at the beginning of this session. And from here, I'm going to scroll all the way down the bottom past a lot of text fields. So I can describe the licensing for this data set. I can describe who has the rights to access it, how they might be able to download it, the size of it, the format. And I'm going to jump to my table of data element inclusion. So this is where I can start attaching data elements in. So if I toggle this first one, just as an example, I can see this is the one related to our delivery date. Now, what we want to do is we're going to be updating Aristotle so it shows more information in line with the editor so that you can see it before you expand it. But what I do know is I'll collapse this one down. And all the way at the bottom is the one that we should have added to our clone at the start. So if I expand this out, you'll see that we have one that says prepared. So this is the name of the column. The logical path is how we define the name of the column, or the name of a field in an XML document, or the name of a property in an API. It's basically a generic way for saying this is the field I'm talking about. And what I want to be able to do is yours should look blank like this. And we want to search for a data element that exists. Now, because you won't have as much ability to see as many as I will, it'll probably be quicker for you. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to search for participation. So if I search for participation, no.
Yeah.
Training evaluation score. Preparation. There you go, preparation. So I can see that I've found a data element that I created earlier. And you should see something similar to this to show the data element that you saved through that wizard. And now this should be, I think everybody should have something kind of similar. Now we've got one more activity we can run through. This one's a little easier, so we're going to start creating something from scratch. And this one's always a little bit nerve-wracking for me because I'm going to ask you to make my own performance indicator to help me determine, yeah, I know. You're going to help me determine if I'm doing a good job because you can only improve if you've got good data behind it. Look at that. So what we're going to do is we're going to create some more metadata, and we're going to see what other examples of content we can start creating in here. Now, to help you with this, the document that I sent through earlier today will have a lot of the text you can use to copy and paste. I might even see if I can find my version as well to save my fingers. So what we're going to do is we're going to scroll down in our creation area. So if we go to our dashboard, if we go to our create box and select create metadata, or if we select see all, we'll get a full list of everything in the registry or all of the item types in the registry. We're going to scroll down until we find one that says performance indicator. So I'll bring that up. So I'll go to my dashboard and I'm going to go create metadata. And I'm going to scroll down to a section titled performance indicator management objects. And then you'll see I've got an option to create indicators here. So if I want, I can go off and grab some help. If I click this, it's going to jump me to the creation, or if I click the create button, it'll take me there as well. And as you can see, an indicator describes a measure that is reported for tracking performance of a process or policy that helps people kind of improve how they're acting within a system. We can link it to data elements. We can create indicator sets as well to track performance over time. So these are really good for describing the performance of a system. So I'm going to click create. And it'll bring us to the short version. So as you can see here, we've got all of our tips here that describe what we can create and how we can attach it to other things. And it's linked us off to the help page. So we're going to start activity 4 here. We're going to start describing a way to define training evaluation performance. So I'm going to copy my name and I'm going to copy my definition across, and you guys can do the same thing. So I'm going to create a name and I'll just hit next. And as you can see, it hasn't found anything similar. So I haven't done this activity in this registry before. If I'd done this before, it would have shown me a couple of items that, you know, had a similar name or had a similar definition, and would have given you the option to kind of dismiss those to proceed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add my definition. So I can say that the training and development group will have an average score of 4 for training sessions, with no training metric having an average score of less than 3.5. And I've also got a way to define that. So I'm going to describe exactly how this was computed. So the idea here is that when I jump over to my components tab, so sorry for kind of jumping back and forth there for a second. When I jump over to my components tab, I'm going to see all of the different options that are available for an indicator. And the idea that we really want to impress upon people is that components tab is the area where you define all of the bits that are different about this piece of metadata compared to other metadata types. And if you need assistance, we've got little help here. So it'll give you some information about what that field is useful for. So if I click on my computation description, and it'll give me a little bit of help. So it's like, it's telling me that this is the area I can put a description of how the formula used to calculate an indicator. So I can tell somebody else, how exactly am I generating this? So I'll close that, and I'm going to paste it in. So here I can see it's the sum of all training scores divided by the number of participants. So that's a really nice definition. But what I could do is I could actually scroll down further, and if I had the data elements defined, so as you can see, there's a lot of ways to describe the numerators and the disaggregators. If I had the data elements defined, I could start attaching them down here. What I am going to do that I think is most important is I'm going to add one disaggregator in, and I encourage everybody to do the same. Because of the dreaded C word from 2020, COVID, everybody's had to switch from in-person training, which we used to do a lot of, and now we do kind of mixed mode, online training, partial online, partial in-person, and in-person. So what I want to do is I want to understand how is the Aristotle trainer is performing when it comes to different modes. And the best way for me to do that is to add a disaggregator in and say, well, I'm going to compare different ways of breaking down this data so that, you know, somebody might have had a bad year adapting to, you know, online stuff, but the rest of their performance may have been fantastic. So I'm going to go add another, and it's going to add me in the option to kind of start filling in information about my disaggregator. So if I select my data element, I can search for different data elements that might be useful for breaking down this this indicator. So if I search for delivery mode, there we go. We can see it's found a training session training delivery mode code. Now, if I click that, it'll fill in, and if I click this little square, or I'll right click this and open in a new tab, I'll open that and I'll have a look. And as you can see here, I've got a data element that describes the training mode that was used for that particular training session. So I would then be able to say, well, I'm going to break down my indicator, and I'm going to look at this person's performance, and I'm going to say, you know, did they do okay in person versus remote versus mixed? And that way I can get a really good assessment of how they're doing. The idea here is that if I saw somebody was struggling, or I was struggling with my online sessions, I might practice that, or I might put something in place to improve it. This is really similar, again, like even though it's a very, very small scale example, it's exactly the same as we're looking at family and community services and other government agencies. If we build a big performance indicator looking at training and safety, safety and of the community, we might break that down by local government areas. We might look at Indigenous versus non-Indigenous persons. We might look at, you know, men versus women to see how different people react to policy changes, to understand that kind of, you know, broad societal impact. If I implement a new policy for improving safety that leaves certain sections of the population behind, I want my indicators to allow me to kind of understand that and describe all the data necessary for collecting that. So that's what this is for. Like, it's not just for, you know, a fun example about looking at training stuff. These indicators have broad policy impact, and that's why we add all this stuff in. So I'm going to jump back to my indicator, and I'm going to add one last. Oh, I think that's enough for this example. So what I can do is I'm going to scroll back up the top. I'm not going to enter a numerator. I'm not going to enter reporting information or benchmarks. I'm not going to add a quality statement. So I can add quality statements about the data. I can add why I'm doing it. So maybe I'll add one there. So I'll say the rationale is we are collecting information, measuring trainer performance, because we understand, we know that client evaluation of training is an important metric to measure customer retention. There we go. That's a good reason. So the more we know about how well our trainers are doing, it's a really good way of understanding how happy our clients are. And if we have happy clients, we have really good client retention or customer retention, which is good for the business. Again, this is where we could put in our rationale. So if we were measuring the self-perceived safety of a person, if we were doing an indicator based on how well somebody perceives their safety, that really, again, tells us a lot about how safe they feel within the community. So we can do things like look at hard data about, how often are people, interacting with police, how often are they reporting crimes. But we might say, well, we want to measure that, but we also want to understand how safe they feel, because if somebody is in a community doesn't feel safe, they may change their behavior and, not go out or not fully interact with the community. So the rationale for measuring self-perceived perceptions of safety is because it gives us a way to identify areas of the community that might be at risk. So this rationale is there to describe why we're collecting this particular indicator in this particular way within this framework. So I've got information about how I've calculated it, and I know that I don't need to fill everything in because Aristotle is quite friendly in the sense that you can leave quite a lot blank and you can fill it in as you go. So I'll scroll back down and I'm going to hit save. And there we go. So what I can see here is I've saved my indicator, and everybody else should have been able to save something very, very similar. And I've saved a definition, I've saved a rationale, and I've described exactly how I compute this. So even though I haven't got all of the data associated with it, and I haven't linked all of my data elements to it, what I can see is I can start to see areas where this data is used. I can see what data is necessary to calculate it. I can describe, or I can understand how it might be calculated, and I can see this little summary at the top. So if I describe the numerators and the denominators, and if I described how this was disaggregated, I'd see that nice little summary at the top that looks a little bit like a fraction here. And then I can see sets that it's used in and data sets that include this indicator. One other really good thing is I'm going to jump across, and to see how well everybody's done, if I go to this data element, I should see that it's included in a bunch of data, and it's also included as a component in a bunch of indicators here. So I can see where this data is used. So all of this information flows in a lot of directions, and I can use these really nice connections to see where this data is used. So that's our second example. We've created all of that. What I'll do is I'll jump back to my slides. So we went to our create page, we created some content, we added in our indicator, we were able to add a name, and it tried to find content that had already been created. It then went along and I added a definition, so I could include a definition to describe it. I added in a description for how the indicator was calculated or computed, as the World Health Organization set up the standard. I can define any disaggregators, so ways that I can break this data down. I've got that there as well. So I linked that in, and I was able to find other indicators that were using the same data. And then I saved it and got a screen that looked a little bit like this. So did everybody have a chance or have some success getting something a little bit like this happening?
Yes.
Great. All right. So does anybody have any questions that want to kind of show off and say, well, they had some issues, or they found something that they wanted to kind of describe to everybody else? Or do we want to proceed? Proceed. I think we're going to power through to lunch now. So we've got one last thing. So our follow-along activities can be summarized like this. We did a whole bunch of stuff in under an hour. we cloned an existing data distribution and described some more data that's been collected. I made a data element with all of its components. So I linked to an object class. We made a property. We linked to a value domain, and we used that to make a data element, which we then attached to our distribution from our sandbox. And then we created a performance indicator that linked back to our distribution to say how we were using the data. So we started to pull together a lot of different activities there. The idea is, and what I really want people to feel comfortable with is, there's a lot of help within the system, and nobody needs to get this perfect first time around. Mel probably might have some disagreements, but the idea is Aristotle is designed to help you begin capturing this content, and beginning to capture metadata is the first most important step. The idea is, as Lauren will show probably after lunch, we'll take a short break. As Lauren's going to show, there's a lot of collaborative activities to help people start creating this and reviewing this together. So you don't need to fill everything in on the first go. You don't need to worry that you're doing it wrong. You can find help within the system. You know, if you go to the components tab, that's where all of the extra bits are going to be. So it's designed to be a user-friendly, relatively safe metadata management platform. So user-friendly and metadata management platform, probably a little bit paradoxical, but we're trying our hardest. So we've created all that stuff. So as a summary of things that we saw, we were able to get to our sandbox and see all of the content that only you can see. So your sandbox is private to you, unless an administrator has kind of elevated their privileges, which is what bit me in the examples. We saw all of the actions that we can do from an item page, and this will change based on your permissions. But generally, if it's something that you made, you'll be able to edit it. If it's something you viewed, you can clone it. You'll also be able to review changes to content. We might look at a quick example of that, actually. We'll do that one. So I'll show you how to view that. If you go to your dashboard, and if we go to our distribution, I'll view my data. So I want to see all of my recently viewed ones. I recently viewed my distribution that I was making a whole bunch of changes to. So from here, you can see this history tab. This is only visible to people within your work group unless you change it. And I can start comparing things. So if I wanted to compare the first version to the second version, if I compare that, it will show me that I added a bunch of extra information in here, and I changed the orders of a few things behind the scenes as well. So it's shown me exactly what's been updated, and it's linked me off to all of the different components. So I deleted this information here. So I had some text and I deleted it, and I attached a data element, and I changed the order. And that's all I changed in this version, which is really good to see. So the idea is you can do a lot of preparation there, or comparison as well. And you can do that from the history tab or the view changes button. I can publish content, I can change registration statuses, I can propose new versions of things as well with the supersedes, and I can add links. So there's a lot of actions you can do. And again, I encourage you, if you've got permission, it's probably very safe to try out. So you can try those later. We saw how to clone content, so it'll always add this little extra bit at the end that says clone. So if you just quickly mush through the buttons like I did, somebody will see that you just copied something and question whether or not you were, verifying your work because you didn't delete the clone bit, but you can just remove that from the name. You can publish content, so this you can do if you're an administrator or of the registry, or an administrator of a stewardship organization. You can start publishing content without having to register it. You can propose a supersede, so if you know that something has that it's been superseded by another piece of content, you can add this in here. So you can describe that there's a newer version of a piece of content, and you need that endorsed by a registration authority. We can view the history of content, so we just saw that. We can add links, so we'll cover this probably in a later training session, but if the registry has set up custom links between things, they can be added in here. We can download content, so we didn't see this, but if you wanted to download a PDF version, you can do that. So you can produce really nice data dictionaries from the registry. As we saw, like we flicked through a couple of these, but we can see the issues, the history, any graphs that are associated with it, so any visualizations and all related content. So this is the issues. So here we can, I think Lauren's going to run through this in more depth after. Here's the history tab that we saw. Here's our graphs, so we can see how content is linked together, and it'll produce nice graphics. And then we can see any related content. So here we can see an example of a data element that's got an inclusion that's included in some specifications, and it's part of an indicator in a bunch of different ways, and it's showing us that. Here's another example of a more complex graph. So all of these nodes, you can drag them around to kind of make it a little bit easier to see. But the idea is, as content is superseded in lots of different ways, all of those different definitions will show up here. Here's some more examples. Just skip through that. And then that's the end of module 2. So we won't run through these last activities, but I will leave them available to you. What I'll do is I'll show you these examples, and you can run through them after when you're running through the slides. But these are some final examples of object classes and properties to kind of help you familiarize yourself with the difference. So what we've got here is we've produced a range of object classes and properties that you might want to use to kind of help understand how these are slightly different and how they're different from the value domains and the data elements as well. So as you can see, our object classes are all really, they're very much, we say they're nouns, they're named things. We can talk about a person and a business. I could talk about an event, or I could talk about a car, a hospital, or so on. And the properties are things about those object classes that we're interested in getting data about. So not how it's recorded, just a conceptual idea of what it is. So a person might have an age, and as we talked about this morning, there's examples of an age being a code or a number. We can talk about a business identifier. That might be a string, like a set of numbers that can't be treated as a number, but we might want to say what an identifier is or what an address is. A training event might be, might have the date that it was performed or an evaluation result for the training event. And I've added in car as a really good example to kind of really help people kind of familiarize themselves with the idea of how these can be different. So we've got identification numbers, we've got fuel economy that can be measured in, horsepowers per liter or, kilometers per liter. The really good one here is we've got color. The reason why I include color for a car is I think everybody, if anybody's bought a car recently or looked at a car online, car manufacturers don't call things red. It's sunset red and ruby red, and every car manufacturer will use their own different list of colors. So one car manufacturer, you might buy a Mazda that's in vibrant cherry red, and then you'll go to a Honda dealership and they'll have fire truck red, and even though they're the same color. So the idea is here that a color is the broad idea of what part of the visible spectrum you're seeing when you're viewing a car. And you might have a series of code lists. So you might have the Mazda code list and the Holden color code list, and then one day, if we're all lucky, we'll have like the Aston Martin code list of colors to choose from. So the idea is there that there's a bunch of different code lists we can use for those colors. I'd encourage you to take this list. We're going to be giving this as one of the handouts as well. Have a go at creating some object classes and some properties and some data elements and some data element concepts in your own sandbox. Nobody's going to see them or judge you on them, but it'll help you kind of familiarize yourself with some options that are available there. So that brings us to the end of module 2.